What is it really like emotionally to be the head of a company?
That's a great question. There's a difference in being a mascot versus the head coach. And, a lot of people think that the CEO, the founder, the owner is sort of the mascot, the main cheerleader of the business that's just running around, like you're saying, networking and just rah, rah, rah. We can do this. We can make this happen. Sure. That's one facet of it. That is, maybe less than 1% of your role. Really, the role is more in alignment of being a head coach or, being a franchise owner and being a business owner. And you're looking at your current team, the health of the team, the health of your players, what's the game plan for the season? What's the game plan for this kind of quarter or month that we're in? What is the game plan for this game? And how is our current plan and the way that we're executing, how is that going to impact the players, right? All the team members, everyone who's involved, everyone else in the ancillary area, the auxiliary areas of the company with your strategic partnerships. How are my decisions going to affect everyone who's currently here with us today, our partners, our future team members that we're bringing into the organization? And how are these decisions going to affect not only my team members and their livelihood today, but also their careers? And that was one interesting aspect that I didn't anticipate looking at when I was starting this and when I was starting the Momentum Internship Program.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. Today is an exciting day, not only because I cannot wait for you to hear from our guests today, but hopefully I'll even have some exciting news regarding my employment here pretty soon. And once that comes about, I'll give the whole story, let you know how it came about, because I utilize principles that I learned on this podcast in order to hopefully land my next job opportunity. But today's guest is someone who I have grown to absolutely love. His name is Mark Phelen. He is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Projxon out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, I came across him because as I was applying for jobs, I had actually applied to his internship program, not knowing that that's what I applied to, which we are going to talk about in this episode, and you do not want to miss what this internship program is. But that didn't work out for me, but it landed me a contact of a person who I have grown to absolutely adore. Mark is a veteran. He's worked at large companies. He's worked as a project manager for the U.S. Army and other places. And a story that he told me that made me endear to him is that one of the times when he was searching for a job before he decided to start his own company is that he came down to where it was crunch time. He needed to find a job. He had a family. He had kids. He needed to find a job. And he sent out, and I am not exaggerating this, something like 600 applications in a 12-hour span. And through those 600 applications, he got a few interviews out of that, ended up being able to choose the place he wanted to go to because he learned how to interview. But through all of that, he has now decided to start his own company. So the first part of this conversation is us talking about his experience as an entrepreneur, starting the company he did. I was able to ask him a couple questions I've always wanted to ask a CEO of a company, and he was gracious to answer those and truthful. And I really appreciated his answers for those questions. And then in the second half of this conversation, we talk about the Momentum Internship Program that them at Projxon have started. It is absolutely incredible. This is a longer conversation than normal, but it is one that I could not cut because every piece of it I absolutely loved. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Mark Phelen. All right, so I'm here with Mark Phelen, and undoubtedly, there's so many things that I like about doing this podcast, but undoubtedly right at the top is the amazing people that I've gotten to meet through in ways that I would have never gotten to meet if I wasn't doing this. You know, I've had people like yourself, you're in Vegas. I've had people in Chicago. I had one lady in Australia that I got to talk to. Like, it's such an amazing thing. And this is something that we met kind of organically on LinkedIn, and then it just kind of became something really cool. We had a nice like pre-meeting where we talked for probably an hour, and I could have sat there and listened to you talk for the rest of the day.
It was hard to get off the phone.
It was hard to get off the phone. And that's not a sentence that isn't said with me very often. I'm a talker. That's just who I am. But I absolutely love it. And I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about today. So Mark, before we get going, I'm going to let you give a quick introduction of yourself and where you are and how you got there and all those things.
Sure. Yeah, Bradley, I appreciate it. So first off, thanks for having me on the Seeker's Journey podcast. Great connecting with you. I love what you're doing. As we've discussed previously, I can certainly relate to, the job seeker's journey and the trials and tribulations that you go through when you're going from career to career, industry to industry, job to job in general. And so my pitch is that I am the CEO and founder of Projxon and the mastermind behind the Momentum Internship Program, which has been an incredibly valuable experience over the last years, establishing and building those two things up. And so what I like to say is my background is I've had three simultaneous careers. Right? So one career, 18 years in the Army, operations, logistics, infantry, officer as a company commander, stood up an organization, laid the foundation for that to grow to 200 plus soldiers, which was really great. So I like to say I've had a startup before, we just didn't sell anything. And with that, my second career has been as a professional. So project process management, continuous improvement implementation, consulting in the health and wellness, construction, logistics, and in e-commerce, and then eventually the tech space, working my way up from having a degree in criminal justice to landing a role at Google as a technical IT project process management consultant in the fintech space. I mean, you're talking about two totally polar opposite, areas on the spectrum. And then my third career has been as an entrepreneur, which has aided me a lot in my career journey. So everything from having my own book of business as clients in college, doing odd jobs in high school, and then eventually moving to LA, having side hustles there, starting up a handyman business, and always having some sort of additional stream of income, right? Especially in LA, you gotta have more than one stream of income. And then carrying that over whenever I relocated to Las Vegas for a project, being able to invest in the property, getting into Airbnb, renting out vehicles on Turo, flipping motorcycles, flipping classic cars, and launching an e-com business, and working my way all the way up to having a light manufacturing upholstery textiles company out of North Carolina with a warehouse and equipment and team members and employees, and just a really, really incredible set of experiences. And all of that has culminated and it all intersects with Projxon and taking all those lessons learned into the consulting space and being able to consult, whether business owners are in the concept phase of their business, they're going through that pre-launch phase. Hey, we're going to start making this legal, getting bank accounts, branding, and then going through launch, post-launch, and then ideally growth and scaling. And so with that was the inception of the Momentum Internship Program, which we'll get into later on. But yeah. Bradley, thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you being here. But now you piqued my interest. What is your favorite car, old, new? If I told you could have any car you want, price isn't an object. Yeah. What would that be?
It's kind of an odd one. I fell in love with the Triumph Spitfire. Ooh. And I was looking into that for a while. And then eventually, because I've got a Triumph motorcycle, so it's a British motorcycle. It's essentially like the Harley Davidson in the UK, right? And so it's this really, really classic looking, when you think cafe racers and all that, that's Triumph. And so I actually own a Triumph America, which is like the Harley Davidson version. So they call the Triumph America because it's a cruiser. It's their only cruiser that they've made. And so when I was looking at investing in a classic car, I found out Triumph actually made they made vehicles as well, which kind of blew me away. And so there was a Spitfire, but out of all of that, there's this vehicle. It's called the Triumph, the GT6, and they call it the working man's Porsche. It's got these really beautiful lines, and it's this kind of small, low center of gravity, really great power to weight ratio car. They're really fun to drive, and I wasn't able to acquire a GT6, but I actually found a Spitfire, which was pretty cool. So I've had that for a couple of years. And when I was buying it from this guy, I was sitting in his garage, and he goes, "So what are you planning on doing with this thing?" I said, "I'm gonna drive it. I'm gonna drive the hell out of this thing." And I did. I've gotten up to 110 miles an hour. It's a 1967. And man, that thing still goes. So yeah, I love building things. So yeah, cars and motorcycles are definitely one of my passions.
Yeah, I can tell it's a passion because you light up just as much as you did when you were talking about your company.
Thanks.
So you can tell that is like something that you just think about just as much. But
yeah,
so I love that one of the things that people talk about is you can look at being in a job search multiple ways. You're right. You can take it as a victim mentality. You can say, well, they did something to me and I'm now in this bad spot, and you can be in this really dark space. Or you can look at it as an opportunity to evaluate where you want to go in your life. What direction do you want to go? Do you want to change careers? Do you want to go down a different path? And one of those things that I love talking about, and I've always been fascinated with, I know I was telling you about this right before we hit record, is I've always been fascinated with people who decide now's the time that I'm going to start something on my own. And I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to figure out what it takes to get this business together. But I also know that there are people who see things online. Instagram's really big on this. TikTok's big on this, where you see those like work 1-2 hours a day, you'll make 10,000 a week, quick money things.
Sure.
And so I always knew that when we did this podcast, I wanted to talk to entrepreneurs like yourself and give the real stories of this is really what it's about. And this is what it's going to take. And it's not going to be a just overnight success. It's going to take a lot of hard work. And so when you decided to start Projxon, and I'm sorry if I just butchered that.
No, that was it. You nailed it. Yeah.
Yes. When you decided to start it, what was it that made you flip that switch and say, now's the time for me to start Projxon?
Bradley, I'll start by saying, you totally nailed it, right? With these fantasies of passive income is what they're selling, right? So when you hear the stories of somebody who has summited Everest or swam the English Channel, what you don't hear are the stories of the people who died on Everest and the people who drowned while swimming the English Channel. And so the things that get fantasized about and are very popularized are these incredibly rare instances where I work 2 hours a week and, I have passive income. Sex sells. And that is, the sexiest thing in business. It's like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me I could just work 2 hours a week and basically be retired or on vacation and make all this passive income? In theory, yeah. Have people done that? Yes. Are there people out there with those businesses? 100%, right? Everyone says like, oh, have a laundromat business or, any of these other, they're called owner absentee businesses where you don't actually have to physically be there, or like a drop shipping company. Like, oh, it's all about systems. You set it up. Once it's up and running, you can completely walk away from it, or you can delegate it out to your team. In theory, yes, 100%. But a business is like a sinking boat. And, if the business isn't moving forward, and there's kind of two issues that you're dealing with your business, is that you have to continuously keep it moving forward and you have to prevent it from constantly sinking. And the balance is ensuring that you're bailing water at the same rate that you're moving forward. If you're only focused on moving forward, it's going to sink. If you're only focused on bailing water, it's never going to move forward. And that's essentially what people talk about with, working in the business or on the business. Those are the two things that you need to focus on: is keeping it alive, keeping it functioning, and then keeping it progressing and growing. The reality of the business, and I actually, one of my guys interviewed me recently for this. We had a great conversation around it. Was, what is it like, essentially, is a summary of the conversation. What is it like being a business owner? And I tell people all the time, compared to a lot of the things that I've done, owning and running a business is one of the easiest things that I've ever, done. I mean, I literally get to have these types of conversations. I network. I mean, what do I do most of the time? I type on a computer. Well, how easy is that? I mean, in physically, it's easy. Emotionally and mentally, it is an absolute gauntlet. And I can honestly say, for 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week for the last year, I've been, building this business and establishing this business, and it's going well. But I never would have guessed, and what I tell people is that whatever business you're looking at starting, you should be not just passionate about it, but you should be an expert in that area, because however much work you think it's going to take, it's going to be 10 times the amount of effort that you can even imagine that you're going to have to put into this thing. There are so many unknowns that you encounter along the way. And you really have to be devoted to whatever it is that is driving you, or whatever sort of impact and value that you're trying to bring to the market, and that experience that you're trying to create with your customers and your team members.
Yeah. You just said something that I've always been curious about. So I'm gonna ask you, because I've always been curious with this. I've been from the oil and gas industry, where there's a lot of turnover, there's a lot of layoffs, there's a lot of things. And you just mentioned the emotional toll of being the head of a company. What is it like to have that? Because I know you must feel the responsibility of having people, literally their livelihoods are in your hands. So what is it like mentally, and what is that emotional toll that goes into being the head of a company that people just don't realize, because they may think that all you're doing is, meeting a bunch of people and playing golf and whatever else. I know that's a bad perception, but I'm sure there's people out there that think that. So what is it really like emotionally to be the head of a company? It's
a great question. There's a difference in being a mascot versus the head coach. And, a lot of people think that the CEO, the founder, the owner is sort of the mascot, the main cheerleader of the business that's just running around, like you're saying, networking and just rah, rah, rah. We can do this. We can make this happen. Sure. That's one facet of it. That is, maybe less than 1% of your role. Really, the role is more in alignment of being a head coach, or, being a franchise owner and being a business owner. And you're looking at your current team, the health of the team, the health of your players. What's the game plan for the season? What's the game plan for this kind of quarter or month that we're in? What is the game plan for this game? And how is our current plan and the way that we're executing, how is that going to impact the players, right? All the team members, everyone who's involved, everyone else in the ancillary area, the auxiliary areas of the company, with your strategic partnerships. How are my decisions going to affect everyone who's currently here with us today, our partners, our future team members that we're bringing into the organization? And how are these decisions going to affect not only my team members and their livelihood today, but also their careers? And that was one interesting aspect that I didn't anticipate looking at when I was starting this, and when I was starting the Momentum Internship Program, is I reached out to a mentor of mine who had an app company. They became really successful, and he had a team of interns that him and his partner brought into the company. And I said, hey man, I think there's an opportunity for us to bring in a couple of young professionals that are really skilled and really sharp and knowledgeable and have a certain level of expertise that, I don't really specialize in, and for us to partner inside of the company, which is how we approach our internship program, and for them to learn something. And my mentor said, here's the deal. If you go down that path, you have to ensure that your business is successful, because if your business, disintegrates, you have effectively affected the foundation of that person's career. When they go to apply for a job, and this kind of, segues into our conversation with the job seeker's journey. When they go to apply for a role, if that company doesn't exist, that's grossly going to impact their career in the future. And I just thought, wow, okay, I can't fail. I can't fail now, and I can't fail in the future. So this thing has to be successful.
Yeah. And I can totally see how your background in the military really probably helps with that mindset. I've never been in the military myself, but from everything that you ever hear with the chain of command and having people's literal lives on your shoulders, and they have your back, you have theirs, and it's such a big thing. I can see how that can really help. But how important, especially at the beginning, I can see it's even more critical, but how important it is to have that core group, that upper management group that are surrounding you. How important is it? I assume it's extremely important to have that group around you that can really help bolster your company. Is that, do you agree with
yeah,
that?
I mean, what this portion of the conversation segues into is really culture and vision, essentially, right? And so you could have a rock star team, but unless you have a strong quarterback that wants to win, it's not going to happen. So, if you've got a quarterback that's kind of at the tail end of their career and they're just looking at phoning it in and cashing in a couple of paychecks until they can retire, or look at doing brand deals or whatever that might be, that's going to affect how the rest of the organization aligns and how they perform. So I'd say the first thing is having a clear-cut vision of what you're out to achieve and what you're out to produce in the world, whether it's a product or a service or a brand, a customer experience, whatever you're trying to create. You have to have a clear-cut vision. And you have to live and breathe that vision so thoroughly that you can effectively communicate that to the rest of your team. And like you're saying, with having that core team, you have to get their buy-in into it. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we're seeing that's happening or missing from the market. And, this is how we want to position ourselves. This is the value that we feel like we could bring to our customers and our clients. And, I want you on the team, and I want you to help, see this vision through. And what you'll often find is there's a difference between a good fit and a perfect fit, right? So a good fit will do the job and they'll get the job done. That's absolutely that's great. You have to have employees and team members that are a good fit. A perfect fit will not only do the job, but they'll look for opportunities to continue to grow the organization, grow the team members, and to continue to move the organization further, towards that goal. It's kind of back to the analogy of a good fit will help bail the water out and keep the boat afloat. A perfect fit will ensure that gets done, and that's happening while the boat is sailing forward.
Cool. So since our core audience would be people that are looking for their next opportunity, I'm really interested because you're faced with a decision to make as you're looking for your next opportunity. There's probably more categories, but I almost think of it in 3 categories of companies. You have large corporations that have been around for a long time, your Apples, your Googles. Here in Oklahoma City, we have large oil companies that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years that have everything is put together, if you will, right? Their pay structures, their bonus structures, all of that stuff is there, but you're dealing with the corporate red tape that you have to deal with. Then you can get into some mid-sized companies that aren't quite startups, but have been established for 5, 10 years, are growing, are starting to get there. And then you have startups, and everyone has their view of which type of company they want to be a part of for different reasons.
Sure.
But on your side, when someone is applying for a job for you and they're wanting to be into a startup, whether they come from an older company, a more corporation, or they didn't, what are some of those traits that you would need to look for to help with you, since you are at that stage of like every sale is a big sale. We're growing with every sale. So what are those traits you look for in someone going to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. In the startup phase, moving from startup to small business, I mean, every decision is incredibly important. I mean, that client, that sale, that team member could make or break the success of the organization, whether it just sustains, grows, or dissipates. And so looking at the differences between, like you're saying, those Goliath companies, those massive companies, tried and true, they've been around for a while, all their systems and processes are in place. You can look them up online when you're interviewing. You can go to glassdoor.com and like literally get the questions that hundreds, if not thousands of people have been asked, and their culture is clear cut. You know exactly what kind of a culture you're walking into, all the way down to your larger, medium-sized companies where you get the brand, you understand what they do, you understand kind of what your role is going to be. They have very clear-cut roles as well. I'm going to work on this department. I'm going to be in this region with this team, working on this product or working on this sector of the business. So there's a lot of clarity in those medium-sized businesses, ideally. So you kind of know what you're getting into. Those are very well-established businesses. Then when you get into the small business and then the startup, totally different ballgame. But when you get into the small business space, it's a little more interesting. They're typically not as mature. There's not as much information on there. They have a newer product. They have a newer service, right? They're trying to do something different in the market or in their specific market. They're trying to do something that's different. So with a small business, you're one of those key players, right? So with that football team, there's no, you've got your starters and you've got your bench team. There's no bench team. On a small business, everyone's a starter. Everyone that shows up, they've got to perform. With the startup, it's a really dynamic environment to work in, is probably the best way to say it, right? A lot of the things that startups are doing is all trial and error. Everything is being tested. Everything is either a good idea or the good idea that they might have tried failed, and now this is their second or third attempt at trying to solve this problem. And so what we look for in Projxon when we're looking at adding team members is two things. We're looking for competency and culture. That's what I boil it down to. It's going to be competency and culture. So number one, can the person do the current job? So today, when we bring them into that role, can they just start today by executing on that role? So it's the competency. And then the other major aspect of it is culture. Do they really understand what we're doing here? And do they understand what the vision is and really the potential and the momentum that we built behind our organization and the direction that we're going? Because with a startup, we're looking for team members that are going to grow with the company. They're going to grow with the organization. And so with competency and culture, I'm not just looking at, can this person do this job today, but what is their previous track record and what types of roles are they going to be able to execute on in the future? How can I grow this young professional? How can I grow this individual in order for them to continue and grow ideally with the company?
I just had this question pop into my mind, and I'm really curious what your thoughts are on this, and bear with me for a second, but I've had a lot of conversations on here and in other places where there's a big conversation now about value-driven conversations instead of transactional conversations. When you're looking for professional contacts, when you're looking into potential employers, having more of a value-driven conversation instead of just telling somebody, hey, I need a job, and kind of throwing it on them. And then,
Sure.
You like throw pressure on somebody who may have just met you for the first time, instead of looking at what are your needs, what are your holes, and then knowing how you can fill those and knowing what your value is, what you bring to the table, and how you would be able to fill those. But I'm kind of curious because you hear this both ways. I've heard it where, nowadays, because the job market is pretty tough and it's harder and harder, it seems, to find that next opportunity, whether that be because of the market being flooded, the way companies hire being different, or whatever it may be. They talk about how it's harder and harder. So I think what my question is, and where I'm getting to is, do you think it is more on, say, a job seeker to really be able to identify their intrinsic value, and as they're going through that initial interview or initial conversation about a job, being able to plug their value into what they perceive the holes to be or what they've been told the holes to be? Or do you think that there's just as much responsibility on a company to recognize as well what that value is in that person, because maybe they don't even know fully what it is? I would argue they need to go through the exercise to know what their value is, but maybe they don't know. So do you think that it's kind of equal? Do you think it's on one side or the other a little bit more? I'm just kind of curious where you think that may fall, especially as you start talking about startups who you're going to wear multiple hats. You're going to have to be able to do a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you think that kind of falls?
Yeah, that's a great point. And so with the market, number one, it's not just hard or difficult. Nowadays, it's impossible. The experience is that it is impossible to land a role. It's impossible to land a role using the traditional approach for job seeking, right? So I have a resume and I submitted my job application and my resume to a company online. Great job. So did 10,000 other people. Great job.
Right.
You're in the game. That's fantastic. But the market now with, the technologies that have been introduced, the new recruiting methods, the implementation of AI, and AI not only from a job seeker standpoint, but from the recruiting standpoint. It used to be that the goal was to connect with somebody in the company and to stand out using a resume. And then the implementation of certain softwares using the ACS, the applicant tracking system, to aid and help recruiters, because now there's with, the .com boom, there's this influx of applications online. Now you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many recruiters in a company, they're looking at 5,000, 10,000 applications. So there's the implementation of the applicant tracking system in order to kind of sift through those out using keyword strategies or however the software is set up in order to say, hey, this is the top 10%, or this is the top 15% of applicants. And then that's just to get your application that you submitted into that 10% pool or whatever that pool is, aligned in the system. And then it has to actually be reviewed by a recruiter. And then then comes, if you're lucky, you get a conversation. If you're lucky, you get invited to an interview. I think when I was, going through my transitions, most of my metrics that I was measuring was like 100 to 1 or, 500 to 1. And I even had a family member of mine reach out and they were saying, yeah, I'm applying for all these jobs, but I'm not really seeing any traction. I go, okay, well, how many submissions have you made? I think I probably submitted for 100 jobs and I got one interview. I go, great. That's your current ratio. Right now, with the types of jobs you're applying for and the stage of your career in, you're at 100 to 1 ratio. So now, if you want, 10 more interviews, you have to go apply for 900 or, 1,000 more jobs. And so ideally, it'll get easier as you go, as you niche down into the types of roles that you want, as your education increases, your experience increases, that ratio should tighten up, more and more. And then eventually it kind of inverts and recruiters are coming to you. You're now being recruited, right? That's the ideal position to be in. And so first off, the market is next to impossible to penetrate. That's the experience. And it's just this sort of, marathon, this gauntlet that you have to go through. And then actually getting the interview, having those value-driven conversations and, selling yourself. Now we start having the conversation of how do you communicate your value, right? And that's what we train our guys on in the internship program is, how do you strategically apply for jobs? How do you craft a resume using the keyword strategy? How do you design your LinkedIn, your portfolio to really stand out in order for you to even land the interview? I tell them all the time, your goal is not to get a job, your goal is to get an interview and just to get really good at landing interviews. And that's how you know that you're in the right place. And going back to how to have those value-driven conversations, is it on the recruiter to ask the right questions, or is it on the interviewee to be able to communicate what their value is? The job seeker should certainly know the value that they bring to the table. That's tough, right? If you're just kicking off your career, or you had a first job and now you're entering into your second role, you might have a decent idea of what you did in your previous role, but now you might be looking at a different industry or a different, even a different role. So how do you understand and communicate the value that you're providing? That takes work. That takes real work to sit down and say, okay, what do I have to offer a company besides doing the job, right? I'm a good fit. I can get the job done. Got it. But how do I make myself a perfect fit for the company? What value can I bring to the table? And that's where you really have to take the time to reflect on your experience, reflect on the unique things that you've done in the past. I interview candidates all the time that, they say, oh, I had a startup, or I had, an e-com business. Interesting. Okay. So if they can do that, they probably understand, different technologies or tech stacking or different applications or whatever that might be. And so being able to look at a candidate and understand if they have a skill set in one area, what are all those auxiliary skills that they've probably developed, along with that? And so it should certainly be on the recruiter to understand how to review a resume, review an applicant's portfolio, and see, okay, how can I position this person? But I mean, if you think that it's a grueling experience applying for jobs today, imagine being a recruiter where everyone's using AI, everyone's using, some sort of automation tool, they're mass applying. And so the recruiters are overwhelmed. And so the advice that I give my guys is that when you're applying for roles, when you're going through that process, and, when you land an interview and you're getting through that phase of the job application process, it's your responsibility to make it as easy as possible for the recruiter to make a decision. Oftentimes what you'll see is that they're not happy as a company, as a team. They're not happy that they have to apply that they have to recruit for that role. They had to let somebody go. They had to downsize. They're stressed. They're overwhelmed with what they have a regular job as well. Sometimes in that company, they're not even a recruiter. The HR team's like, hey, we need your help to recruit for this role. So from my experience, oftentimes you're being interviewed by somebody that has no idea what they're doing. They're not a professional recruiter, or they might be really junior with that. And so I've been in interviews where I've been through enough interviews where I'm realizing this person doesn't know what to do next. And I've had to help facilitate that conversation. I'll say, hey, would you like to know a little bit more about this type of role or my project management background? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, great. And you have to kind of help them along and make it as easy as possible. And going back to the value-driven aspect of it is getting away from just regurgitating your CV, right? Just regurgitating like your chronological step-by-step in your career. So that's great. But really being able to explain the why. And so what I do with my guys with their LinkedIns, typically in your about section of your LinkedIn, the way that psychologically we think about it, if I want to write an about section and explain somebody my background, I'm going to say, I'm from here. I went to high school here. I went to college here. And now I work here and I'm looking for this kind of role. Most people aren't going to read the first two sections, let alone get to the bottom. And the bottom is the most important. So I have my guys invert their about section and start with, this is where I'm going next. I'm developing myself to be a future X. And then this is what I'm currently doing. And this is what my past looks like. And so what I found to be really effective in interviews is really knowing what you want. And it's difficult. It's really difficult when you interview somebody and say, hey, you applied for this project management job. Really excited to talk to you today. So tell me, why are you applying for project management jobs? And they just go, yeah, I've had a position in the past and I worked on some projects. Do you like it? Do you want to do it? Do you want to do something else? It's like pulling teeth in an interview, trying to figure out like, hey man, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to facilitate this conversation and I'm not getting any, sort of assistance from them with even having that conversation. I think that a lot of candidates, they get overwhelmed. They get really nervous. They get kind of stressed, and I mean, they're sort of disheartened because they're like, okay, I'm going to get interviewed, but I'm not going to get this job. So they have this pessimistic approach when they're going into an interview. And so at the end of the day, as an applicant, as a candidate for a role, if you can just create a good experience, if you can have a positive conversation and leave them in a place where they thought, hey, I might want to refer that person to a different role in the future, or just network with them and stay in touch. Or, hey, I'm going to, you're not a good fit for this position, but we are going to keep you in mind. I definitely would like to work with this person. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're being interviewed for is, do you want to look at this person's face every day, have conversations with them, problem solve with them, and like literally work with this person? Is this person going to be a good fit for the team? And that's where it's, the difference between a good fit and a perfect fit is, it's not from an applicant standpoint. I think that the mindset is, I could do that job. I could totally do that job. I have the skill sets. And so this is really frustrating because I could do that job. Well, shift your mindset more and kind of think bigger picture. And so when I was, in the job market interviewing, I would say, what is the team looking for? What kind of problems is the team encountering right now? Has there been a project manager in the past? What sort of issues were they dealing with? How can a project manager help the team? Whether you're a project manager, web developer, graphic designer, whatever your role is, really understanding how your role produces value in the organization and then helping have and facilitate that conversation during the interview.
Yeah. I just love how it's starting to come back to human touch.
Yeah.
It's been a theme of every guest I've had on this podcast to this point. Technology's great. LinkedIn is fine. Job boards are fine. But that human touch, if you have the ability, I've been so encouraged by not only just getting to meet people like yourself, but just people around Oklahoma City that are high in companies. Maybe they started companies. Maybe they are high level. There's so many people that are willing to talk to you. And if you can meet them for coffee, take them out. I told you when I first met you, if we were in the same area, I'd constantly want to take you to have coffee and ask you like tons of questions. But I actually just had this experience this last week of a guy that like I went to the same gym with, and I knew that he had a business. And originally I was just wanting to talk to him about his business. He was like yourself. He was an entrepreneur. I love hearing like how they got started in this. And I finally got a chance to take him to lunch. And through that, I started asking him questions about the business. And he openly was telling me some holes that they had, some like problems that they were experiencing, not because of like bad employees that they have. That's not what he was saying. It was like, well, we just don't have this skill set yet. And then you can kind of realize like, oh, wait, I have that skill set and I have this skill set. And then you can casually mention like, hey, I spent 15 years as a project manager. I love that you keep saying project management stuff because that's speaking my language.
Yeah.
But like, I spent 15 years at this. Oh, you need someone to help herd cats and organize projects and keep people accountable and keep them online. I said, that's been my life. Yeah. Like that's all I've done my entire career. And I love it. So like, I would love to do stuff like that. And then they mentioned other things that was content creation. And I love that. That's why I'm doing this. Like, and you start to figure out, oh, wait, I have value that maybe isn't X's and O's. There's soft skills here. There's just things that I've done over the course of my career. I've had really difficult projects that seem like they're not going to work. And then you find a way, you chip away, and then eventually you find out it can work. And so you have that soft skill. And so I love that it's coming back to just that personal touch and that like really trying to have these conversations with people that is less about, I need this, and more about how can I help you? And I'm a quality time person, so that's speaking my language, but like, I just love that that's coming up. But I definitely, when the first time we talked, you started telling me about Momentum, and it was kind of organic. You just started talking about it. And I remember I told you that I really wish that this existed when I was coming out of school, because I would have jumped on this immediately. Now, I had a great onboarding program to the company I ended up at, and I use those things to this day. But what you're about to talk about is something that if anyone has a college graduate that's about to graduate, or especially if you're in the Las Vegas area, but even you're expanding outside of that as well. Like, I would love for you to start talking about Momentum, what it is, why you started it, and why it's had such a great impact, because I just think that this is incredible.
Yeah, Bradley, I appreciate, you providing me the opportunity to share this. It's been an incredibly rewarding experience over the last year building this program. And I would say, this conversation isn't just for applicants or candidates that are looking for an internship program or to be in the Momentum Internship Program. But I would say this conversation is also for business owners and, HR professionals, business managers that are able to facilitate having an intern in their company, or, creating an internship. And what we'll discuss is, this thing now that is just turning out to be monstrous, and pun intended, there's a lot of momentum behind the Momentum Internship Program. And, because of the way that it was incepted and just its overall design. And I'm seeing now that through partnerships and conversations, there's a massive need for internships out there in the market. I believe there's over 4 million active applicants plus looking for internships, and there's less than 1 million internships that exist in the United States. And I can tell you at Projxon, we also get applicants that are international that, we don't facilitate. We keep everything US based, but the competition, so that just points that the competition for internships alone is really, really fierce. And so if you're a business owner, or you have a startup, or you're in HR, and you have the ability to at least look at bringing in an intern and providing that experience to them, and like we're going to talk about in this conversation, getting the value of having that young professional on the team with, their unique skill sets, I think it's incredibly valuable. So, so thanks for bringing it up. Going back to the inception of the internship program. So you and I had this conversation, and what's unique about the Momentum Internship Program is that I've never been in an internship program before. And so, and like you were saying, neither have you. And at the end of the day, what I've realized that has been created over the last year is the internship program that I would have wanted to be in earlier on in my career, that would have helped me get to where I am now, or would have helped me get through that transition from industry to industry, role to role. And so when we were kicking off Projxon a year ago, so myself and my business partner at the time, and we landed a couple of clients. So now we have a business, and we're trying to keep it, bailed out and afloat. And we're servicing clients. We're trying to keep that business going and doing sales and networking and marketing and everything else. And I was in a situation where, my business partner was handling the superstructure of the business with marketing and sales, and I was doing the infrastructure side, executing on client engagements and doing the operations and project management, setting up our processes. And then at the end of the day, I'd work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., go for a run, eat dinner, come back, sit down, and then work on the website. And I'm like, what am I doing building this website? I'm not a web dev guy. I've done it before with my startups. I know I'm not good at it. And so, having drafted this thing and just launching a website, it was really clunky and it was really basic. I thought, man, there has to be people that are out there that could really benefit from this experience legitimately. I think what we're building at Projxon is really cool. My business partner is incredibly knowledgeable. He was a professor in an MBA program at the time with a background in marketing. I thought, man, I'm sure that there's somebody out there that would love to come work for my business partner as an intern. I wasn't even thinking about it for myself, and come learn from him and value from that experience. And, ideally, if it would be somebody that could help with marketing or web dev or web design, that would be an incredibly, mutually beneficial relationship. And so my business partner and I discussed it, and I decided to launch essentially a beta program, and interviewed 50 candidates in a month, and just was listening to their stories, their, the horror stories and the trials and tribulations that they've been through with internship programs alone. And the questions that I would most often ask were, have you been in a program? What was that like? What was missing? What went well? What didn't go well? And if you were to be in an internship program again, what would you want that to look like? What are the things that you would want to take away from that program? And after doing essentially market research with all these candidates, I found a handful that were perfect fits essentially for what we were doing. And I said, okay, just hang tight. We definitely want to bring you into the team. Just let us kind of build up the landing pad for you to come in so we can onboard you. So we started with 6 participants in the program, which retrospectively, that's already too many, right? That's a lot for a beta program. And so we started off with 6 and just kind of got the ball rolling and had to figure out onboarding and training and the legality behind it and offer letters and everything that goes into mapping out their experience inside of Projxon. And what transpired from that was a solidification of the foundation of what is now the Momentum Internship Program, which is, it's a 24-week model. So it's 180 days. It's part-time, fully remote, semi-autonomous. And the foundation of the model is that it's a participant-first model. It's a life-work balance model. And everything about the program is focused on the professional, vocational, and career development of our participants. So what's unique about Projxon is that we don't have a retention-based model. So there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? We're not going to retain every single candidate that goes through the program. Our goal is to provide our participants the opportunities, the training, the experience, the networking, the support, the mentorship that they need to solidify those professional assets, their LinkedIn, their resume, their portfolios, and to help them develop the skills that are going to be necessary for them to leverage in those interviews in the future, or even just going to networking events and saying, hey, I'm with Projxon. I'm in the MIP. I'm working on these projects. Do you know anybody who's hiring? This is kind of the direction that I want to take my career. And what's been really fascinating is that for some of these participants, at the end of the program, they don't just benefit from being in it. They become different people. Like the projects that they're working on, the way that we communicate, the types of meetings that we have, the confidence that they build, especially with, mapping out their career or identifying the value that they bring to the team, going through mentorship sessions with their resume and their LinkedIn, networking and getting out there and really getting that validation of like, okay, cool, I do know what I'm doing. And, we've had guys that have gone from one connection on LinkedIn to over 500 connections being recruited by Apple, Meta, and OpenAI.
Wow.
I mean, from 0 to that is really, really incredible. Now, that's not all of us. That's not just projecting the MIP. Obviously, that was a rock star, candidate and participant. But at the end of the day, what we're creating is this framework. We're creating this foundational structure for these perfect fit participants to come in, get the value out of being in the program, have that structure, learn project management, learn how to collaborate, learn how to communicate, learn how to be a part of an integral position in a team. And we have something we call the no-fail mindset in Projxon, which is two-sided. Number one, it's not a class. You're not going to fail. You don't get a grade at the end of this. And on the other side, this isn't a class. You don't have the option to fail. So if you're given a project or if you elect to say, hey, I'm going to take on this project, I'm going to work on this portion of a website, or I'm going to work on this aspect of project management, there's no backup. There's not somebody doing that project, just in case it falls through. There's basically extreme ownership in the program, which I think is really rare, because it's really risky from a company standpoint to say, hey, we're going to give you access to our social media, or we're going to let you post what you think should be posted for the company or for the brand on our LinkedIn or our website or whatever it might be. And it's really stressful initially. And then you figure out how to empower people and how to communicate. And you just get, as a business owner and as a team leader and a company lead, You learn how to empower people better. You learn the holes that are in your organization, whether it's a branding guide, project management tools, processes, how are we operating inefficiently? And the beauty is that you have these young professionals that are really smart. They're really talented. They're very tech savvy, and they come into the organization with a completely different perspective. So they might not have experience, but they have perspective. They have skill sets. They have the motivation to land that role that they're looking for in the future, and they bring a really, really, really unique aspect to the team and to the organization. So, it's now one of our service offerings at Projxon is to do internship consulting because our program's become so successful, legitimately, really incredibly successful.
Yeah, I just love that, especially because when you come out of school, you may have had a job, like I would have summer jobs or whatever in the summers. But I wasn't learning the skills of being in an office necessarily. Even the job that I had that was in an office, I wasn't being empowered to do anything. I was just given some tasks that really, it seemed like nobody else wanted to do, whether that be cleaning up data or data entry was one of them. For like this trucking company that like I just entered things for them. They just had this big long list of things, and I just was going to take me 3 months to do the entire thing. But I wasn't empowered to do anything. I wasn't involved in meetings. I wasn't involved in anything. I was just taking my wage. And the job that I had in college was in an IT department. I was sitting in a server room. So the last thing I knew how to do, if anything, was be involved in an office setting. The professional office setting. Absolutely. I didn't know what it meant to be counted on for like major projects that meant something. And I had to learn that in real time. So to be able to do that is incredible because now it's like taking AP classes before you get into college. You're a step ahead when you get into college. Absolutely. You get to do something like this and then you enter the workforce. You're like a step ahead of all your other college graduates who are having to start from square one. So I just think that's so cool. Is there a minimum age that you have? Is it like, for instance, could a sophomore in college be a part of this? Or is there do they need to be a little older, or what do you typically have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we'll go to our demographics that we serve in the Momentum Internship Program. So there's 3 tracks that we've identified, and this is just organic. This wasn't by creation. We just did an onboarding yesterday, and we had 20 people join the program yesterday.
Wow!
I mean, just phenomenal. And going through that onboarding experience and kind of recapping the program, there's 3 tracks that we've developed. One is the career kickoff, there's a career launch, and then a career transition. And so we have a diverse set of roles in the organization, everything from graphic designers to project managers, everything from, HR specialists, operations specialists, so there's a diversity in the maturity that is necessary to be successful in that role. There's even leadership positions that we have as well. And so the demographics that we've seen that have been the most successful that we like to specialize on and focus in for the career kickoff, it's really a junior or a senior in college that might not have that much work experience, or maybe has done one internship before. So they're really looking for a way to kick off their career and to have, something on paper, start, like you were saying, being a part of a team. So that's the career kickoff, kind of, perfect fit there. Then you have your career launch, senior in college, graduate level, first year, second year graduate school. They've got their undergrad under their belt. Maybe they, had a job for a little bit, a little bit of work experience. They've done a couple of internships in the past. And so, then they ended up going back to school for their master's degree, and they have a much more clear idea of what they want to do with themselves, the value that they bring to a team. And so typically those are the ones that are high producers. They're very focused because not only do they understand their worth and they validated their skill sets, but they have a really clear depiction of the role that they want to land when they leave the program. So there's much more intention that they bring to the projects and to the milestones and goals for themselves when they come to the program. And then the third track is that career transition. So we have guys that have retired from the military that is essentially in one sector and they're looking to transition to the civilian sector. Or we have guys that have an IT background, but they want to get into HR. They have an HR background, but they're transitioning into IT. And, they have 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years of experience. They're either back in a master's program or they're getting their second master's. So we have guys that are in their PhD programs as well, and they're looking for this career transition. They're looking to go from one sector or one industry to another, and they're leveraging the Momentum Internship Program for networking and experience and, professional development and everything else, and to kind of acclimate into that industry or that role, which is really incredible. So who does well? I mean, we've had guys that are sophomores that perform really well, but they're sophomores at UCLA. And again, we've had guys all the way up that we have somebody with us right now who has their PhD, went back to school for their MBA. And so that's sort of what we're seeing the program mature into. It is absolutely a graduate level program. So if we do have a sophomore or a junior in there, they're typically like, what we've seen is that they were the valedictorian of their high school, or, they're track stars or something like that. These really, really high performers. So we didn't start off like that. Those are just the types of candidates that were successful in the program, because it's not, necessarily an internship. And that's what I like to communicate, is that they're not interns. It's not an internship. They are participants in an incredibly rigorous internship program. And this program has been designed essentially as like a professional boot camp or a professional finishing school to help them transition from their academic to their career. And so we're exposing them, and what you're talking about earlier, when you're sitting in an office and you're not, or you're in a server room, you're not getting the best exposure. And so a part of it is that it's a requirement to come to company meetings. It's a requirement to get exposed to all aspects of the company and understand, as a web developer, how does that relate to IT, and how does IT relate to the overall, growth of the organization?
Yeah. So, yeah. And I think that the other thing that I love about it that just popped into my head is you may have went to school with the idea that you wanted to be a project manager. You thought, this sounds cool. I think it sounds great, whatever, but you've never actually done it. And maybe when you get in and you do it, you find out, oh, I don't like leading all these meetings, or I don't like being the one held accountable for everyone else's actions, or I don't like telling someone, hey, you need to get this done by this date, and holding them accountable to that. And so it's a great way to find out, like, is that really what you want to do? Or, is this just something you thought you did, but now you know? Because the thing about that onboarding program that I always talk about, and I apologize to anyone who's heard me talk about this before, was exactly that. Was we got all these department heads from all the different departments within, I was at Baker Hughes at the time, an oil field service company. And they came in, and the head of engineering came in, the head of project management came in, the drafting people came in, all these different departments that they had, and they explained what it is that they do on a daily basis, what their day-to-day looks like, what their issues are, what their, all those things. And the moment that the project management guy came in, I immediately said, oh, that's it. Like, that's me. That just fits my personality. I like to be the guy that's like helping everybody get their stuff done. But I was at a point, and I still am like this, I don't even care if anyone knows that it's me behind it. But I like to be the one to help people like move forward, Yeah. And it was that helped me identify it. I wouldn't have known, because I was a marketing major coming out of school. I was kind of a fish out of a water. It was in a heavily engineered company, and I was a business major. And I didn't know outside of the marketing department if I could do anything. And so I love that people will have the opportunity to figure it out and excel and be able to, network and all those things that you described in order to really take that step forward and learn who they are and what their value is. That's my favorite part too, that you mentioned, is like them learning what their value is to a company, because so many people don't know.
And going back to, having a company, running a company, being, the senior, rep in HR, when they're bringing in an intern or when they're creating an internship program, there should be that participant first model that's in place. What I like to say is that inherently the company is going to benefit in some way from having an intern. So you're going to benefit from it. So why not look at taking that opportunity to, you could potentially grow somebody to retain in your company, or, you could potentially grow somebody that is going to have a really successful career in another industry. What we've seen typically, the way that internships are created, and it sounds like you had a role that was similar, even though it might not have been an internship, is that a company is created, they get up and running, they're profitable, and they're just incredibly inefficient. And whatever you don't solve, those problems that you don't solve early on, as the company scales, those problems are going to scale as well. So if it's a data entry problem, now you just have this massive backlog. And typically, all the guys that are 9 to 5 are going to one day look around and go, God, we have such a big backlog of work to do, and it's such menial work. There's really no value, but it has to get done. I've got an idea. Let's bring in an intern, and let's give all that to an intern, and that way they can learn, what it's like working with a team, and they should be grateful for even just being, a part of the company. And then you end up with somebody who's an intern in a company that's getting zero value, that's basically just doing, data entry. And there's nothing wrong with doing data entry, but it's that maybe they're in an internship where their entire role is data entry and they're not getting mentorship, or people aren't checking in with them. They're not getting performance reviews. They're not being asked, what do you want to do? Is there anything, like, do you have any other skills or interests? And so it sounds like you went through a really great onboarding where you got that cross-functional exposure, and they came and said, hey, this is what we do. And so that's another reason why it's a requirement in the program for our participants to come to company meetings so that they can hear what's happening in HR, what's happening in IT, business, marketing, operations. And we have had participants in the past that have migrated from one team to another team. They've said, I'm glad I got this experience, but I really want to try my hand in project management. We've had them go from one role into project management or from project management into another leadership position. And so that's kind of the whole point of an internship program. It's not to get your data entry work done. Your data entry is a symptom of an inefficient process. If anything, you should bring in an intern and say, one, what has to happen is this data has to be entered. And two, we'd like you, as you're doing this, to kind of work with our team to figure out a more efficient way so that we eliminate this backlog of data entry in the future. There's an incredible amount of value that you can get out of having that additional team member that is kind of on the outside that can look at things from a different perspective. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Well, Mark, I want to respect your time because I know you're overly busy, and but I could, like I said, I could sit here and talk to you forever. So I know that you are launching a podcast that I'm really excited to listen to. I don't know if it's come out yet. I don't know I know you've recorded one. But where can people find you, find the Momentum program if they hear this and thought, man, my kid would benefit from this, or I would benefit from this. And just where can they find you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've actually recently started drafting, and it's going to launch soon, the Momentum Internship Program.com. So that's where we're going to host all of the practices, the approach, the design, the methodology that we use in our version of the Momentum Internship Program at Projxon. The mission in the future of the MIP is to establish the Momentum Internship Program, that framework, that model, as the national standard for internship programs in the future, and for programs to be a participant-first model, for them to be focusing and specializing on that professional, vocational, and career development. And, as a business, as an organization, there is a duty that you have to develop these young professionals and to also give them a realistic experience of what it's going to be like to be a part of a team, so that they don't have just this, sort of fictitious approach of like, oh, I had a poor experience as a project manager, I don't want to do that. Or project management is easy, I'm going to go back and get my master's in it because I'm sure I could probably do it. So we really should be giving them as realistic as possible and experiencing that. And so with that, we're separating the MIP from Projxon. So, we'll still have all of our stuff on our website for Projxon's Momentum Internship Program, but we're launching that basically as a separate organization and sort of service now on its own website. So you can find more at the MomentumInternshipProgram.com. And then, my podcast, this is a byproduct of Projxon and a byproduct of the Momentum Internship Program, and having really phenomenal conversations that aren't necessarily about just Projxon and what we do or just the MIP, just in general about entrepreneurship, leadership, career development. And so my team and I have developed and we're launching the Phelen Focus. So you can go to thephalenfocus.com, Twitter, Facebook, Spotify. We're kind of across the board. They even convinced me to launch a TikTok. So, you can find the Phelen Focus on TikTok as well.
So when we see you doing fun dances, we're going to,
It's AI generated.
Oh, come on. No, well, I can't even say it because I'm not doing that either. Mine are just clips of this too. So I got nothing to say.
This is great though. Honestly, Bradley, thanks for, having me on the job seeker's journey. And I absolutely love what you're doing here. Incredibly passionate about it. And it's nice to have a place to converse about, what everyone is experiencing out in the job market. And that's one thing that's been really interesting in the MIP is, we have guys that go through the entire program. They land these really phenomenal jobs and going through offboarding their exit interviews. And I go, so, tell me about the value that you got while you're here. And of course, it's, professional, career, vocational, networking, trying out new skills, getting certifications, consulting with clients, all sorts of really phenomenal things. And then jokingly, I just said, what are you going to miss? You're going to miss us. What are you going to miss? And I had a participant say, I'm going to miss the meetings. And I thought they were kidding, right? Because who loves going to meetings? And they said, yeah, I'm going to miss the meetings. I go, no, seriously, what are you going to miss? And they said, no, I'm going to miss the meetings. I'm going to miss seeing people and getting that support, being able to communicate and collaborate. And so one thing that has been really incredible and valuable from an experience with having developed Projxon and the Momentum Internship Program is like what you're doing here with the job seeker's journey is in the program. We have cohorts of people that are going through that gauntlet out in the market, that are applying and not hearing anything, or, applying and getting rejections, that, they've sort of fantasized about landing a specific role in a specific company and it doesn't happen, and it's devastating. And so in the MIP, it's been what I've seen is that it's been really great to have them able to relate to each other and just, network and spend time and learn from each other with better tips and tricks for how to get those jobs and how to be more effective with their job search. So Bradley, way to go with the job seeker's journey. I was kind of blown away when I saw it. I was like, I've never heard of anything like that before. That's really unique. I was like, I got to connect with this guy. This is really interesting. So,
well, I'm so glad you did. And I'm sure I'm going to be bugging you for years to come because you're now in my circle, at least to me. And,
absolutely. This is great.
I'm going to be... Yeah, I would love to talk to you again about just about anything. And I can't thank you enough for being willing to take some time to do this. And
of course,
definitely people need to check out this program.
Yeah, I'll have you on the Phelen Focus.
Yeah, that'd be so cool. But thank you so much. And I can't wait to bug you later down the road and see what else we can talk about.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bradley.
All right.
See ya.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Job Seeker's Journey podcast. I want to thank Mark for coming on, for being candid, for being open, for being honest, and for sharing his insights on entrepreneurship and for letting us in to what the Momentum Internship Program is. I cannot stress this enough. If you have a kid or you yourself are a junior, senior in college, maybe you're in the graduate level of college up to even PhD, or you're looking to potentially change careers, change industries, I highly encourage you to look into the Momentum Internship Program. It's something that I wish was available when I was in college, when I was going through my graduate program and those kind of things. I cannot stress enough how much I love this program and how much I know you would get out of it if you were to join that program. If this is your first episode listening to us, first of all, thank you for hitting the play button. Thank you for getting to this point in the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you've listened to multiple of these episodes, I can't thank you enough for being willing to hit that play button multiple times. If you know someone who is going through a job search and are struggling, needs encouragement, needs help trying to figure out what they can do a little bit differently to find that next job opportunity, please do me a favor and share this podcast with them. If you're listening to this on Spotify, I'm going to humbly ask you to rate, to review this podcast so that it can get out in front of more people. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, enter a comment, start a conversation, get this in front of more and more people so that they can hopefully get encouraged, feel like they're learning something, and hopefully helping them landing that next job opportunity. But from all of us here at the Job Seekers Journey podcast, I want to thank you again for listening, and we'll see you soon.